So now that this is an internet thing, I guess I'll jump on the bandwagon and be a part of it. I just want to say that I fully support Brooklyn Beckham and his wife Nicola Peltz. I don't really support giving yourself two last names or a hyphenated last name, but that's beside the point. I thought Nicola was English, but she is American. Who knew? Apparently a lot of people know because you can look that up. It's a simple fact. But anyway, I just wanted to talk about this and then show you some dumb shit comments people are making because I saw them on a completely different video. Comments to the same effect and they made me rage. But we're gonna talk about this first because this is the whole reason there are those comments in the first place. So, Brooklyn Beckham, who is, I think, the third child. I don't know how many kids they have. They have four or five kids. Victoria and David Beckham have four or five kids. And Brooklyn is one of their kids. He's a grown man. He's also married. He's been married for a few years. And he recently made this statement. And I'm happy he did. And we'll get into the reasons why he clearly made this statement after I read it to you. And I will also comment on it as well. Okay, so this is what he said. My family values public promotion and endorsements above all else. He said this on Instagram. Brand Beckham comes first. Family love, quote unquote, love, is decided by how much you post on social media or how quickly you drop everything to show up and pose for a family photo op, even if it's at the expense of our professional obligations. Wow, okay. So obviously he's saying that he has been expected to drop everything to show up for a family photo op when he already has other stuff scheduled. And I'm sure he said, well, I have all these things scheduled that are important. And whoever, likely his mother or his father, are like, well, I don't care. You need to come to this. That's some real bullshit. But anyway, we've gone out of our way for years to show up and support at every fashion show, every party, and every press activity to show our perfect family. But the one time my wife asked for my mom's support to save displaced dogs during the LA fires, my mom refused. The narrative that my wife controls me is completely backwards. I've been controlled by my parents for most of my life. I grew up with overwhelming anxiety. For the first time in my life since stepping away from my family, that anxiety has disappeared. I wake up every morning grateful for the life I chose and have found peace and relief. My wife and I do not want a life shaped by image, press, or manipulation. All we want is peace, privacy, and happiness for us and our future family. My wife has been consistently disrespected by my family no matter how hard we've tried to come together as one. My mom has repeatedly invited women. I think this is incorrectly copied on people. That tends to happen sometimes. But anyway, my mom has repeatedly invited women from our past into our lives in ways that were clearly intended to make us both uncomfortable. What in the fuck? So Victoria Beckham clearly invited women at least twice from Brooklyn's past, who he likely dated before, to show up at some gathering or some event or whatever where she knew that Brooklyn and Nicola would be present. That is so twisted. That kind of behavior is so fucked. And maybe someone who has an eating disorder, like his mother, thinks that kind of behavior is okay. You guys, I just want to say this, okay? And I'm really, really serious about this. I do not fuck with vegetarians, period. If you're someone I'm getting to know, you're someone I kind of know, and I find out you're vegetarian, I'm saying peace out forever. I'm not going to say that to you. I'm just not going to try with you. Because that kind of behavior is mentally ill. Being vegetarian is a masked eating disorder. And people who are super obnoxious about diet are people that I will not mess with. I will not be in touch with you. I will not pursue any type of relationship, professional or otherwise, with you if you're vegetarian, period. I have had too many bad experiences with vegans, former vegans, and vegetarians. I'm not doing it. Maybe that makes me the bad person because I flat out will discriminate against vegetarians, but I don't care. I don't care because I know what I'm doing is right. And I'm not trying to mess with anyone who has any sort of eating disorder, period. I read that Victoria Beckham got mercury poisoning because she ate the same fucking fish and vegetables for every day for literal years in order to stay thin. That is not someone who is mentally sound, obviously. I also want to say this, okay? I was actually going to start with this, but I forgot. David and Victoria Beckham are not popular in the United States. They're not really famous. I wouldn't have even known who they were if I hadn't watched VH1 as a kid. They were on what was that show? It wasn't Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. But it was something to that same effect. Where they were like, oh, look how wealthy David and Victoria Beckham are. Like, I would not have known who they were. Were it not for that program. Obviously, they're in the tabloids. Obviously, they're somewhat known. If you approached any random American and were like, hey, do you know who David and Victoria Beckham are? They'd probably be like, yeah, I know of them. They would literally tell you that David Beckham is a soccer player and Victoria Beckham is his wife and also a former Spice Girls. I honestly don't think, you guys, I really don't think that most people know that Victoria Beckham is a fashion designer. Most Americans. I really don't. Okay? She's just not popular out here. Anyway, let me carry on. Despite this, we still traveled to London for my dad's birthday and were rejected for a week as we waited in our hotel room trying to plan quality time with him. He refused all of our attempts unless it was at his big birthday party with 100 guests and cameras at every corner. When he finally agreed to see me, it was under the condition that Nicola wasn't invited. Also fucked. Totally fucked. I don't know why you would behave that way unless you were trying to control your child, your adult child. What the hell? It was a slap in the face. Later, when my family traveled to LA, they refused to see me at all. Wow. How rude. That's okay. Here's another thing I'm going to say is that people think that because you're wealthy or because you're well off, not even necessarily because you're wealthy, that your problems don't matter or that your problems are trivial or they'll just dismiss whatever your issue is because they're jealous of you. And that is people who are not good at thinking. That is people who are dumb. Only stupid people do that. But anyway, also, people don't understand or realize, I mean, it's harder to realize that abuse isn't always physical, emotional, or mental, or financial. Okay? I have read this, actually, and Brooklyn never once mentions money in this. At all. He says the things that they have done, but he doesn't say, well, my dad didn't give me $1 million. My dad didn't fund my wedding. His parents probably, I think actually Nicola's family is wealthier than the Beckhams. And they're American, by the way. Nicola's father is some kind of investor. I didn't realize I had already watched her on the Bates Hotel. There's a Bates Motel, I can't remember. She was in that show. But yeah, her father's this wealthy investor. So both of their parents probably paid for their wedding. I don't know, but he never mentions money in here, ever. Anyway, okay. The night before our wedding, members of my family told me that Nicola was not blood and not family. Well, no shit, Sherlock. I hope you're not inbreeding, intermarrying. Of course, no. You shouldn't. Your spouse should not be your own blood. That's gross. Maybe they wanted him to inbreed. I don't know. Since the moment I started standing up for myself with my family, obviously you are family once you're married. That is your chosen family. That is your chosen spouse. Poppy, I'm making a vid. It's okay. Since the moment I started standing up for myself with my family, I've received endless attacks from my parents, both privately and publicly, that were sent to the press on their orders. Wow. Sorry, I didn't even read this portion of the statement. I guess it's been edited here and there, but like I'm kind of reeling from that statement because that is so twisted. Unfortunately, there's not really a law that exists against doing that. If you're in a famous family, it's not illegal for your famous family member to go to the press and say bad things about you. Yes, you can kind of sometimes apply defamation laws, but technically that's not illegal. But that is entirely messed up. I'm so disgusted that anyone, famous or otherwise, you guys, here's the thing, is that this type of behavior is not unique to wealthy people. Obviously, your neighbor who maybe is your aunt, if you guys don't get along, she can't go to the press and be like, Brian did this, right? That's not possible. But they do have their flying monkeys. They do. They'll go to other family members or friends or whatever and be like, "Oh my God, Brian didn't invite me to his cocktail party because he hates me." They'll make shit up like that. Okay, this is not. Like I said, this is not unique. This is unique to wealthy people, right? Imagine having the press be your flying monkeys. That frightens me. Just saying that, just reading about this, that's terrifying. That is someone who does not love their child. That is someone who is completely reliant on the third party of the tabloids, of the press, of fame doing something for them. Do you love your child if you're going to do something like that? Not really. That's what I'm saying, is these forms of abuse are not physical, they're not emotional, they're not mental, they're not financial. There are forms of abuse that are harder to see. Oh my God, that's just so fucked up. Okay, I've received endless attacks from my parents, both privately and publicly, that were sent to the press on their orders. Even my brothers were sent to attack me on social media before they ultimately blocked me out of nowhere last summer. That's twisted, messed up. My mom hijacked my first dance with my wife, which had been planned weeks in advance, to a romantic love song. In front of our 500 wedding guests, Mark Anthony called me to the stage where the scheduled was planned to be my romantic dance with my wife, but instead my mom was waiting to dance with me instead. She danced very inappropriately on me in front of everyone. I've never felt more uncomfortable or humiliated in my entire life. We wanted to renew our vows so we could create new memories of our wedding day that bring us joy and happiness, not anxiety and embarrassment. I read in one of the comments for the other video that someone was like, I knew someone who was at the wedding and she didn't do that. I don't care. Maybe it didn't, that's not exactly how it went down, but the fact of the matter is that Victoria and Beckham made her son's wedding about her. She prioritized her own desires over her son's for his wedding, and that is not cool. I've also seen that happening with normal people who aren't famous. That kind of behavior. You guys, I can't tell you how many people I've known personally or just heard of or seen or whatever who had some humongous wedding when they in fact did not want that. They only did that because it's what their family expected of them, or their parents expected of them, or even their in-laws expected of them. They only went along with that because someone else wanted it, not because they themselves really wanted it. And that's really sad and messed up. And that also puts you in a really bad place because say you want to have like a smaller wedding with, 75 to 100 people. And your in-laws are like, oh my God, no, we were going to invite our whole family. It's going to be like 300 people. That puts you in a bad position because if you say no, if you're like, no, absolutely not, then you might start off your entire life on a bad foot. But obviously you shouldn't, it's hard to gauge that because you can't just predict that out of the blue. But like that kind of thing happens all the time with people of every single wealth class. Okay. And it's twisted every time because you should only want your child to do for his or her wedding what he or she wants to do. Not what you want to do. Not what grandma expects. Not what wealthy father-in-law wants to do. No. It is about the couple. And people forget that. Didn't he just say that he had anxiety his whole life? Which doesn't surprise me at all because being a child of extremely famous parents and just living that life would be extremely anxiety inducing for anyone. Okay, I lost my place. Sorry. Okay. My parents have been trying endlessly to ruin my relationships since before my wedding and it hasn't stopped. Also fucked. My mom canceled making Nicola's dress in the 11th hour despite how excited she was to wear her design, forcing her to urgently find a new dress. That's twisted. That is really messed up. I don't know what could have possibly happened there other than Victoria Beckham being stupid and dropping the ball because she wanted control. Obviously. I found a statement that Nicola made, and I think she was really trying to sugarcoat it and not trying to badmouth Victoria because she was like, oh, it just ended up not working out. But like, you're allowed to be upset about that. How would you not be upset about that? I would, if I were Brooklyn, I would be upset about that. My mom is a humongous world-renowned fashion designer and she just can't make my wife's wedding dress? Are you kidding me? What's the problem? If she had some kind of health emergency and they're just that doesn't even matter though, because if she has the design, she has people who can make it for her, she has people who can fit it for her, she already designed it. If she has a health emergency, she's bedridden, guess what? You can still put a dress on that girl and get it on her in time for the wedding. That is something that I could not forgive if I were Brooklyn or if I were Nicola. Anyway, forcing her to urgently find a new dress. Weeks before our big day, my parents repeatedly pressured and attempted to bribe me into signing away the rights to my name, which would have affected me, my wife, and our future children. Okay, that is really fucked. They were adamant on me signing before the wedding date because then the terms of the deal would be initiated. Okay, I think that's because he changed his name. He is not Brooklyn Beckham. He is Brooklyn Peltz Beckham. Or maybe it's, yeah, Brooklyn Beckham Peltz. Yeah, it's Brooklyn Peltz Beckham. So I'm sure they were trying to tie up his rights to his own name. Forget about money, you guys. Okay, we're going to get to this with the stupid ass comments we're going to later, but I don't think you guys, most people realize how meaningless money actually is when in the grand scheme of things, even to someone who is a millionaire, billionaire, whatever the fuck, like Brooklyn Peltz Beckham, like Victoria Beckham, like David Beckham, like anyone. Okay? All the money in the world cannot bring back a dead child. All the money in the world cannot bring back quality time that you never had with your child. All the money in the world cannot give you quality relationships. Period. Okay? So obviously he's not even, he's not mad about the money in question here, which again, he did not mention. Victoria and David were clearly trying to get him to sign away the rights to the name Brooklyn Beckham because he was changing his name to hers. That's really fucked up. My holdout affected the payday, and they have never treated me the same since. See, again, it wasn't about the money. They wanted the name. They wanted his name. They wanted their way. I heard about this situation. I can't remember where I heard about this. So this woman got into a relationship with a guy. I think she was American, but it doesn't really matter. This woman got into a relationship with a guy in a different country. Let's just say she's American. And they kind of dated for a while, and they ended up having a child together. And her child was an American citizen. She had full custody of him. And I think it kind of fizzled out with the husband or baby daddy. I don't even think they were married. But it fizzled out with him. They ended up going their own separate ways. And then, unfortunately, the baby daddy passed away somehow. And then she didn't even know this until after the fact, until her baby daddy had passed away. His grandparents, or her child's grandparents, his parents, showed up out of the woodwork and said, hey, we're actually super wealthy. We want to leave our estate to this grandchild only under the condition that you give him our last name. And the mom was like, what the hell do I do? That's such a weird situation. Who was ever put in that situation? But that's fucked, and that's twisted, and that's wrong. Because anyone who actually loved their own grandchild would not put the stipulation of, you need to give him our last name, because he in fact had the mom's last name. Anyone who loves their actual grandchild would say, we don't care about his name. We don't care where you raise him. We just want to make sure that he has a good future, and we're happy to give you this money. We're happy to leave this money to our grandchild. That's wrong, okay? And like the fact that they were like, well, we only want to give it to you if you change his last name. That's so stupid and twisted, and you don't love your child. You don't love your grandchild, if that's the case. And you know what? I wonder in that situation what would have happened if the dad hadn't died. If the dad were still with us, would the grandparents have even bothered to get in touch with their foreign son's baby mama? Because he didn't have her last name, their last name anyway. So the fact that they have never treated me the same since says a lot here. A lot. Okay. During the wedding planning, my mom went so far as to call me evil because Nicola and I chose to include my nanny Sandra and Nicola's nanny at our table because they both didn't have their husbands. Both of our parents had their own tables equally adjacent to ours. Okay, I'm going to say this, and this is rather controversial, but honestly, and I have experienced this firsthand, you guys, because I've been a professional nanny, all right? A lot of the times, when you've got a wealthy family where mom and dad are both working or mom and dad are both busy all of the time, guess what? The kids love the nanny more. My kids love the nanny more than mom and dad because the nanny is the constant in their lives. Okay? I can see why David and Victoria would be upset about that. I really can. I would be a little bit ticked if that were my situation, but it's not that big of a deal. I mean, It's like, obviously they already had issues in their relationship. It's not like they just showed up during the wedding planning situation. And unfortunately, you can't sit next to everyone. And I'm sure both Brooklyn and Nicola were going to spend time with David and Victoria intentionally during their wedding. You can't be with them every second. Also, again, it was their wedding. But David and Victoria made it about them. Okay, I have been silent for years and made every effort to keep these matters private. Honestly, I'd barely even heard of Brooklyn Peltz Beckham before this. Unfortunately, my parents and their team have continued to go to the press, leaving me with no choice but to speak for myself and tell the truth about only some of the lies that have been printed. I do not want to reconcile with my family. I'm not being controlled. I'm standing up for myself for the first time in my life. For my entire life, my parents have controlled narratives in the press about our family. The performative social media posts, family events, and inauthentic relationships have been a fixture of the life I was born into. Recently, I have seen with my own eyes the lengths that they'll go to place countless lies in the media, mostly at the expense of innocent people, to preserve their own facade. But I believe the truth always comes out. Yes, good for you, Brooklyn. Here are the comments I was referring to earlier. So this is just a random video about what's going on. I guess Cruz is another one of their children. And here are some of the comments, which are very telling and extremely rude. Okay, could address that in private instead. No, the fuck you couldn't. This, as far as I'm aware, this is the only time that Brooklyn Peltz Beckham has ever said anything publicly that I'm aware of in this kind of way. And guess what? If your parents are this fucking toxic and disgusting, I would sure as shit go to the press too. Or I think he just said this on Instagram, you guys. He didn't even go to the press. He didn't even go to the press. He just said this on Instagram. He said all of this on Instagram because I'm sure he's sick and tired of being treated the way he's been treated his entire life. And he finally was just like, look, this is what's going on. That's the end of it. Goodbye. Must be hard living of your parents' money, then marrying into money. Okay, I love how people who make comments like this usually cannot even write properly. This person, Mr. Gill 6982, meant must be hard living off your parents' money, than THAN, marrying into money. Well, guess what, bro? It doesn't matter because both of them are wealthy. Again, relationships are more important than any amount of money. Okay? Billionaire problems, no one cares, just go live your life. Actually, I think this is pretty significant. Okay? Because just because someone is wealthy doesn't mean their problems are insignificant. Just because, you know what? why are people even jealous of Brooklyn Beckham? Because he was born into this shit show. He was born into wealth. Period. You don't have that kind of choice. It just occurs. Okay? So people being like, well, he's wealthy. Who cares? Very sad to see this row in public, and when the family never said anything about him or wife publicly, whatever said it's his mom, he shouldn't humiliate her on public. Again, on public. Every family has issues, but a mother is a mother. I've heard that one before. That bullshit of being like, well, it's your father, well, it's your mother, it's your sister, it's your brother, it's your cousin. I don't care. Who cares? Who cares if it's your blood family member? If someone deserves criticism, they deserve criticism. If someone deserves to be called out, they deserve to be called out. Okay? Here's another one. One day, Brooklyn, you will grow up. Let's hope you've matured as you've grown. I think Brooklyn Peltz Beckham is the most mature person in his entire family. He's putting his foot down. He's saying, absolutely the fuck not. and people are surprised about it. And I'm not necessarily mad that people are surprised about it, but I'm mad about stupid ass comments like this. How is it not mature to say where he's coming from? Like, I'm sure this anxiety and just constant, what's the word I'm trying to say? Constant jerking around with what his mom is saying or what his dad is saying or what his mom is threatening to go to the press about, or like his mom fucking inviting his ex's places, or his dad saying he would only spend time with him without his wife. Does that not deserve to be called out? Because he's wealthy? What stupid thinking. Okay. Okay, I'm not going to read that. It's too long. Cruz needs to pick up the phone instead of using the media to play Chinese whispers. That's actually true. I guess Chinese whispers, that must be... Is that the game called telephone? We call that telephone over here. Okay. The wife is Brat V. Victoria B., who is also Brat. Nicola hasn't even... Brooklyn never even said Nicola said this. Nicola did this. He's only talking about his experience here. I think the issue here is that... I think the deep-rooted issue here with Victoria and David is that Nicola's family is actually wealthier than them. You know what? Now, it's not only that Nicola's family is actually wealthier than them, is like Nicola's father actually kind of earned his wealth more than David Beckham and Victoria Beckham. I said it. He was an investor. He like actually worked a lot more to get all the money he has. He wasn't relying on press, as far as I'm aware, to the degree that David and Victoria Beckham were. Like, yes, of course, he was a good soccer player. I'm not denying that fact. And I'm not denying the fact that Victoria Beckham's his wife, which is going to give you a lot of status, right? I'm not denying the fact that she's a fashion designer, but again, like I said, most Americans probably wouldn't even know that or say that. Yeah, she was a Spice Girl. She was in a pop band in the 90s. I just think that's part of the issue here, is that a lot of wealthy people like to dick swing. They like to swing their dicks and be like, well, I have this much money. How much do you have? And they expect the other person to swing their dick around and say, yeah, well, I have this much money. I can do this. Okay. Oh, okay. This is a really stupid one. This guy has had so many careers. I think his parents told him no, and this is how he crisp mom did. Okay. This is a stupid comment, but it's actually unintentionally getting at a real issue that a lot of uber wealthy children of uber wealthy parents face, which is their parents give them almost no inclination of the real world. Their parents spoil them to a degree that is just, unheard of. Like Victoria and David Beckham, for example. So it's not surprising that a child of such wealthy parents does have a hard time working. Not like physically going to work, but like having a career. Because you're constantly being compared to your parents. You're constantly in your parents' shadow. You're constantly being scrutinized way the fuck more than someone who is not in your same situation is. Sounds like a ungrateful lil brat. You meant to say Anne. Because when you're speaking English, when you're writing in English, you say Anne when the next word starts with a vowel. I'm not sure if she's talking about Cruz or Brooklyn, but I don't care. See, look, here, why are people being so rude about this? I guess they're rude because they're stupid as fuck, never been around wealth, and don't have money. And the fact that that makes so many people unable to think because they're so jealous is absurd. You're really lacking intellect if you're a person like that, and I encourage zero people to be like that. Here we go. Typical ignorance. Because you are rich people's kid doesn't mean that that is enough. You want human kindness and honest love. Usually poor people think that if you are rich, then you don't need anything else. Facts. I believe Brooklyn and his wife. Me too. Okay. I think this video has gone on long enough, but I am glad that Brooklyn Peltz Beckham has made this statement. I'm glad that he's called out his parents. I'm glad that people know about this. Okay? He has nothing to lose but the relationship with his family, and sometimes it's worth it. A lot of the times it's worth it. Clearly, his parents are causing him and Nicola a lot of stress. Clearly, he is trying to improve his situation to the best of his abilities. And people were like, oh, why didn't you keep this private? Guess the fuck what? This would have come out at some point. And a lot of people don't understand why people go no contact. And it's really difficult to just say why that is. It's difficult. I know that Brooklyn did give examples here, obviously. But, like, I'm saying it's hard, even if you give a list of reasons, right? You say, so-and-so did this and this and this and this. I can't forgive that. A lot of times that's not enough for people. And I understand that. But the fact of the matter is that that's not your situation and you don't understand what's going on there. You haven't experienced that person's life and relationship with the problematic person or people. So it is tough to kind of be like, to just give bullet points. I mean, I think the ones he gave were completely legitimate, but it's hard to make other people understand that who just don't understand that. I'm going to tell you guys something about my dumbass ex, because I've seen this kind of behavior from people before, and I see this kind of behavior on the internet a lot. But anyway, so this guy I dated, he told me he had a friend group, and I was like, what do you mean friend group? What are you talking about? This is when we were like starting to date. He was like, oh, well, the friend group, blah, blah, blah. And he was in this group of friends who it was like 20 plus people who went to college together, went to grad school together, and still had like gatherings periodically. And I honestly thought, I immediately upon learning that he was in this friend group. By the way, he didn't graduate from college. He was just like grandfathered in because he was friends with someone else who was in this friend group, and they just kind of let him in the group. But anyway, I was like, okay, one, that's gross that you have this friend group, because that's just, I just don't really fuck with people like that. I should have broken up with him right then, because I think that's embarrassing and gross behavior. But anyway, he would hang out with this guy from the friend group, and he told me that he didn't even really like this guy. And I was like, why are you hanging out with him if you don't even like him? And he was like, well, he's in the friend group, so I kind of like have to hang out with him. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? No, you do not. If you don't like someone, by all means, don't hang out with them. It is that simple. And like when I told him that, he was like, ooh, like that hadn't even occurred to him. I wish more people would cut people off. I wish more people would go no contact with family members. I wish more people would actually try to comprehend the situation before saying stupid shit like, well, he's wealthy, who cares? I really do. I really wish that. And I didn't really like, I didn't really have strong feelings about Victoria or David Beckham at any point. Um, I mean, what have they done? What has David Beckham done aside from playing soccer and like being a model and doing some business stuff that's like noteworthy to me, an American? Other than have this really badass son who's willing to smear you publicly. That's that's obviously his best achievement in my opinion.